Roller Coaster Simulator 7D is our newest attraction.
7D? 7 dimensions? Like, I know what 2D and 3D means, but what are the other 4?
Sight and sounds and just all your senses, yeah.
But those are senses, not dimensions.
I think smelling colours and just feeling really good inside are some of the dimensions. It's a pretty crazy ride.
Are these plastic garden chairs from Bunnings?
Hold on tight, guys. Hold on tight. Oh, here we go. Oh, whoa! Get me off! I don't want to be on
This ride is balls. It's just an old TV with a...
Oh, no. Oh! Ah!
Thank you, Anima-saurus World, and welcome to our chat for today. I am very lucky to have with me Tim Andrews, Tim, just a quick overview of who you are and where you fit into this wonderful world of animation.
Animation. Well, I've worked in animation for probably around 12 years. Most of my experience has been in the sort of 2D cutout animation using Toon Boom software, and that's kind of where I've spent most of my animation time. Worked for a few different studios around Sydney. Worked at Flying Bark on Ninja Turtles. Worked up at Cheeky Little on one of the shows up there. And at my earlier days, I was very fortunate to be able to work with a bunch of really lovely ex-Disney animators who taught me a lot of what I know. So yeah, and we were fortunate enough to have some good projects from overseas to work on that sort of developed my skill.
Cool. Yeah, so I hear that about a lot of 2D's one, because Disney was originally in Sydney for a little while. Not many people realise that, but yeah.
It was just before my time. It was just before my time. I finished high school around the time that they closed down, so I never got my toe in there.
Yeah, but it's good that the talent's still around where you can actually go and pick people's brains. Oh my God, it's so... I've worked with a few of them as well. So yeah. But the big thing which you've got coming out at the moment is you're slowly to release your pilot, which you've been working on, Nurry Brothers Adventure World. Just on that, what made you how long ago did you actually start working on that?
I decided to do this as a crowdfunding campaign, and I made a few attempts at that, and I've learned a lot of things about crowdfunding. The main sort of production of it was after receiving the funds through Kickstarter, and was sort of a bit of a year-long thing as I tried to sort of juggle full-time work and family at the same time. Yeah, that's a bit of a passion project, and I've always wanted to create my own show. I've had a few opportunities to do that some years back that didn't really sort of eventuate in much, but yeah, I just thought, I've always wanted to put together a pilot, write something of my own, and see if I can get it off the ground, and we managed to do that.
Oh, so that actually took you about a year for that first part of it, that from that early concept stage to actually getting it funded as such. Did you what sort of steps did you go about taking to start off with, getting a pitch together to put up on a Kickstarter?
Yeah, so I started off trying to put it through Possible, and I think one of the big lessons I learned, and I think I kind of knew this going into it, is you really have to make your goals bite-sized. If somebody goes on there and goes, yeah, I want $200,000 to make a full animation series, they're just not going to raise that money. And initially I aimed for $12,000 to do a pilot, and even that was probably too ambitious. I could have tried to go, okay, I want to raise a couple of thousand to do a storyboard or to record voice. I could have done it even more bite-sized, and that's what I would sort of recommend to anybody trying to do the same thing. However, I realised, with Possible, they don't give you the funds if you don't get them all. So I think we got up to 5,000 or 6,000. So that was sort of a learning experience. And then I decided to launch it again. Would have been at least a year later, over a year. Because we've got 4 little children, so my wife we had newborn twins at the time, so trying to do stuff in your spare time was just impossible. But I decided to revisit it. I used Kickstarter this time, and just thought, well, how much can I actually? What's a realistic amount to raise, and how much can I do with that? and we aimed for close to 8,000, and we got there. It was, I think, the biggest thing, and anybody who's thinking of doing crowdfunding, listening to your show, I think that one of the biggest things you have to realize is that it is very, very difficult to get randoms and strangers to pitch to your, pledge money to your project. It's, I'd say that almost all of the people who pledged money were people I know, or I know how they got there. You can get a really big social media reach, which I think I did using a few little tactics. But even still, it takes a lot to really get somebody to pledge something.
Because I've gone through crowdfunding as well, and they always say it's like 80% of the people who are going to fund you are people you already know. So which is
definitely
quite a big chunk of people, especially like you said when you're trying to raise, how much money you're trying to raise. You got to kind of think, where's that going to come from? So I think with any creative endeavor, it's easy to think that everybody's going to love your idea. And, it's the classic story I think of is, somebody in a band who goes and plays a gig and takes, the big box of 100 CDs and everyone loves the music, everyone's getting into it, and then he sits there on his table at the end and doesn't sell a single CD or sells one and thinks, what's going on here? It really takes a lot for people to make that step to fork over money for something creative. And I think, I was really amazed at how generous people were in the pledge amounts that they gave, and that kind of blew me away. But you really have to explain your idea well to start with, but also realize that people are actually more interested in investing in you as a person if they know you. They sort of, Kim, he does good stuff. I'm happy to put money towards that, even if they don't exactly know what the project is. That was a big thing that I learned. Yeah, the belief in the person, because it's always the person that carries through a project. So I've heard that you've got to carry a certain, like when you presented it, when you put it up on Kickstarter. I know Kickstarter have like pitch videos and tier rankings. How much time did you spend actually putting into that, like that Kickstarter fund, I guess you call it?
Yeah, so I made sure that I had like a minute of animation, because I think people really need to see what it is. Prior to that, my first attempt on Possible, I had like a little sort of, I did have a video, but it wasn't sort of an example of what the show was going to look like and what the comedy style was going to be. So I made sure that I had something, because the script, I could work on that at any time without needing money for that. So I made sure that I had that in place. Just sort of put together a minute of the show that I could then, of course, use in the finished product anyway. As far as the rewards, I steered away from anything physical, because if you start promising people T-shirts and caps, then your costs can blow out. And I also realised people don't actually. It depends on what the crowdfunding is, but for this sort of thing, I found that people didn't necessarily want or need to have that. They were happy just to support it. A lot of people even they'd give $150 or something and tick the box, no reward, I don't want a reward, which is really nice. But yeah, I did things that were all like digital download. They can have themselves drawn into the show. A few people, with the larger ones, people could actually voice a background character and that sort of thing, and that way it cost me nothing to give them that reward. Rather than like trying to post out hoodies or something and spending surprise amounts on postage, and that becomes it's like a second job then to the main task. So,
and you're also getting people involved in your project then as well. If you say, look, the background project, I've heard that, if you want to have people engaged in it as well, it's like, you can voice a character. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so they become little advertisers too, because then they're sharing their thing. And feeling like they own it. It is very difficult to get people to own your project. I really wanted to do that with people who are, involved in writing and animation. I wanted them to kind of feel like it was their own. That's surprisingly hard to do, I think, because at the end, it really is kind of my own little passion project. And trying to rope in people to kind of share it as their own and to try and spruik it and whatever is actually quite difficult. So that's something I've got to explore a bit more.
Yeah, it's like, developing your own projects are hard because, getting people invested in them. So were you working by yourself completely at that point, like with the script development and everything? It was all kind of off your own shoulders?
Yeah, so thankfully I had a few 2, 3, 4 weeks between contract jobs where I was able to spend a solid amount of time with some of the early work, the storyboard and character rigging and that sort of thing, which was great. The money dried up very quickly, as you can imagine, for a 22-minute show with $8,000. It didn't last very long, so it very quickly became a passion project. And what really made that so much easier was that people were, and you can have a look at the credits and see how many animators were involved, and they were all happy to donate their time to do it. And it was, some people did a good solid minute or two of animation, which makes a huge difference. And that was, I'm really quite grateful for that.
Yeah. So even after funding, then did you you were working full time as well at that point? Have you been working full time all the way through development of Nurry Brothers Adventure World? Yeah.
Yep. And coming home to those wild twins and my other child. So it's been trying to squeeze in time on the train. Commute time is valuable. And even at one point, sending my wife with the kids off to her sister's place for the weekend so I can just, smash out as much as I can. I mean, part of what made the whole process easy was just using a lot of tricks that I've learnt through using Toon Boom Harmony over the years and taking lots of shortcuts. The backgrounds, for example, in the whole show, there's probably about no more than 20 to 25 backgrounds because, it's all vector. And so we draw it large and then it's almost like a sitcom kind of setting where you're just sort of zooming in on different patches of where you need the characters to be, which I think is a huge time saver. You could go down the track of, drawing a background for every shot and having all those fancy angles. But with cutout animation, you don't have the luxury of being able to chuck a camera underneath there, have an upshot or anything like that. You keep everything quite sort of flat planed. So that makes a big difference. I think even things like most of the characters have the same mouth rig. There's a few. I think I pretty much got like a. Trying to remember how I did it. I sort of had like a more feminine set of lips and a more masculine set of lips and some different types of teeth, and they're all just recycled, and means I only need to draw those once.
Yeah, you've got a library of those shapes and everything. You just kind of pull them in.
That's right.
Over top.
Yeah, so lots of shortcuts. It was too ambitious, really. It was too ambitious for what I was trying to achieve, but we got there in the end, and I'm quite happy with it.
Like so you can't in the production process you chose to use Toon Boom. Is that just because you knew it the best, or is that what you did choose?
Yeah, so I've been using that for a long time. In my very, very early days of self-taught, sort of self-taught garbage I was putting together, I was using Adobe Premiere and Photoshop and it was just kind of a bit messy. And when I sort of had to step into the real world, and I worked with some ex-Disney guys, I mentioned before, that was how I kind of learnt my craft. I was sort of thrown in the deep end with the Toon Boom software, and I'm not sponsored or paid by them, but I always give them a strong recommendation for anybody learning animation. It's easy to sort of go, I've already got the Adobe Creative Suite, so I can use Flash or Animator, whatever it's called now. But I think Toon Boom Harmony is worth the investment. It's built for TV and feature film animation, and I think when you kind of get stuck in your ways in a software that's not made for professional animation, you kind of not really doing yourself a favor.
Because I look at the Adobe suite. It's incredibly good and targeted specifically for like marketing and advertising and motion graphics. It's brilliant at that, absolutely brilliant. And you get Photoshop, Photoshop for image manipulation. But you're right, actually getting when I went through learning, I learnt 3ds Max, and halfway through my course, I'm like, well, what's Max good at? And it was for games, and that's not what I wanted. So so I found someone who
you had to go down a different path. Yeah, that's right. And a lot of the studios, 2D studios, are using Harmony rather than other software. There are others, other software packages being used by different studios, but Harmony seems to be the majority. it's like any software. There's that 2 or 3 weeks of just headaches trying to figure out software.
How to use it, yeah.
You get it. You get it. You feel like a master, and you once you kind of get there, you're confident you can create almost anything.
Yeah.
Software,
So how about the back end of it? So that's that's definitely the front end of it, the what looks good. But were you using anything in the background to kind of keep track of shots and what's been voiced or anything like that, and how long each shot is and who's doing what?
Yeah.
Like, were you using anything?
No. So I mean, in my professional work, we use Shotgun Studio, which I think is great. But I think with this project, because it was mostly myself working on it. The community, even with the storyboards, they were extremely rough. It just didn't seem like a good use of my time to be trying to finesse the drawings in the. It was more about the timing and the cuts and where the character's standing and that sort of thing. So it's pretty messy, and I think that the back end as well was Google spreadsheets and that sort of thing. One other thing I did do, which so typically in animation, you're creating one scene or shot is its own project file, and you could a half-hour show could have 200-300 shots in it. Yeah. But in this case, I thought, well, okay, if this is and maybe I don't have much experience in 3D and CGI, but maybe this is a similar sort of thing, where you create that stage, you put where the characters are, and you just have that camera moving in and cutting into and so you might have a 1 minute scene, a 1-2 minute scene sequence that's sort of got heaps of cuts in it, but it's just one big file or two big files, and I found that was a time saver, but it's just sort of it made things more manageable. I didn't have 1,000 files I was dealing with.
Yeah, especially like long dialogue shots where you can actually just cut between two people talking. It's just like one file, cut up, two cameras, back and forwards. You can almost do that then in editing as well. It's just like, it's all cut out, and you piece it together like a puzzle. I've heard that from a couple of people going, we still finessed it afterwards in edit. Were you doing that? But I know 2D is very different because you usually have to draw everything up. So did you lock down your edit really early, or?
Yeah, I did. I've got a background in editing, doing editing work. So, I was confident to be able to mess around with it afterwards as well. It's kind of when you're taking that rough approach, I think it's inevitable that you end up having to tidying things up a little. But definitely in animation, you lock your edit down early on, so you're not animating anything that you don't need to.
Yep. Yeah.
It was actually. It was quite incredible when I drew the storyboard and edited it all together. I mean, I was aiming for 22 minutes because that seems like a sort of a common format to go with. I know that's kind of changed now with streaming platforms where it sort of doesn't matter so much. But I thought, no, 22 minutes is a good goal. And I had I'd record all the voices, all the dialogue tracks were there. I used Storyboard Pro, Toon Boom Storyboard Pro to do all the storyboard, edited it together. And I think I used Premiere as well. Edited it together, and it landed on exactly 22 minutes.
Oh,
so I was just like cheering. Go home early that day. Yeah, it was just perfect. In saying that, it kind of changed a little throughout the process as I realised that some scenes maybe weren't necessary, or that I needed an extra line of dialogue, pick up dialogue here, or but it's still it hit that duration. In saying that, it's a 22-minute pilot, but launching it on YouTube at the moment, I've split it into 3 parts, which I think sort of each part is sort of 7 to 8 minutes, and I think that it just happens to work well as a 3-parter as well. The right cliffhangers hit at the right spot.
I was going to say, you didn't intentionally write it out to be split that way, but it just worked well that way.
No, that's right, and it's sort of got that 3-act structure, so it just tend to work anyway.
For me, where did the actual idea for it come from? Is there a personal entwinement in the story, or do you feel like you're one of the characters in it? Or where did the actual idea of the Nurry Brothers Adventure World come from?
I actually, I've been sort of had some ideas rattling around in my head for a while. One of my initial ideas was sort of just a bunch of housemates, and one of them sort of stumbles upon a sort of good fortune, and sort of how a bunch of guys living together deal with the one rich guy in their family and the sort of adventures that ensue from that. It's a pretty sort of bland and boring setting, and we were actually on a family holiday up at the theme parks on the Gold Coast, and I thought, why not bring someone into use that setting, the ideas kind of developed from that. It's based on no particular theme park, but also every theme park you went to as a child, particularly the ones that no longer exist. I don't know where you grew up, but I'm assuming there's some theme park that you either near where you grew up or where you went on holidays as a child that sort of that comes to mind as far as being particularly dodgy or isn't there anymore. For me, there was Australia's Wonderland was just down the road, which was actually pretty good. But yeah, there's a lot of dodgy ones around.
Oh, yeah, we grew up, we went to the sea, so we didn't go to theme parks, we just went to the ocean.
Okay, well, I'm wrong then. No, well, it's cool, like, when developing this, occasionally someone would sort of say, oh, yeah, we had this place called So-and-so World or Adventureland or something, and, they had the slippery slide that would burn your skin as you slide down, or, places that just had all these dangerous rides and things, and I actually... consulted a friend's dad who worked at Australia's Wonderland when it was open, and I was hoping for him to say, one time this ride caught on fire and this one fell down, but it was the opposite. He said that the mechanics and the people working there had great pride in their work, and that, things never kind of went wrong. So there was no dirt that I could use, but this whole premise of this is that this guy finds out that he's inherited a theme park from the side of his family he has nothing to do with, and when he sort of rocks up to the place, he realizes that it's not quite to standard, and he has the option to actually sell the land, and he's got to kind of make that call. The rides aren't to standard, but also the quality of human beings working there aren't to standard either. So that's where a lot of the comedy comes from.
Yeah, you got to kind of find out somewhere where your joke's coming from, because if everything's bland and normal and everyone's got under control, it's not a very good story.
Yeah, that's right. Well, one of the characters I've got is a big cardboard cutout here. We had a premiere screening after I finished the show in November 2019, and you can't see the whole thing, but there's a photo opportunity. There's a little thing where you can stick your head through, and this is Rory Chevenson, who's one of the entertainers at the theme park, and he's in a wallaby costume, which you'll see him in part 2 of the videos on YouTube.
You've completed it for a little while now, so what's made you feel like you wanted to get it out to the public through YouTube now?
Well, I think getting this thing made, created, written, made, everything is all something I felt confident doing. As far as financial, selling it, pitching it, all that sort of thing, that's kind of where my skills come to an end, and so I'm a little lost, to be honest, on my approach to what to do with this. I figure if I just sort of sit on it and not let anybody see it, that's probably not a good move. So I thought, no, just get it out there. If I can get lots of eyes on it, that would be good. Unfortunately, I know that in Australia the financing options are pretty limited, and an Australian show having commercial success is a bit of a rarity. So I've always thought from the start, if I can at least get the show finished, and that's the end of its journey, that I need to be satisfied with that, and I am. Putting it out onto YouTube now and just seeing if I can brew up a bit of an audience. Every sort of you don't want to be going out chasing likes and subscribes and all this sort of thing, but every like and subscribe you get is valuable. That's something on your portfolio that maybe down the track you can show and say, look, here's this show, it was really popular. For your sort of next step in your career.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is actually getting stuff out for people to see, because it does build your audience and it builds your brand recognition, you can almost say, because you've got stuff done. It's just like, yes, victory.
Yeah.
What's the next thing?
Yeah. And it's not just getting, a little 2-minute thing done. This is a solid 22 minutes of something that's watchable and entertaining. So it took a lot out of me, and it required the help of other people, but it got done, and so that's something that we can be proud of.
Just on that, So how big was the team that you actually ended up working with? You know, to bring it all together by the end of it. How big was the team?
Well, we all worked. We didn't all sort of work in the same room together. It was, people sort of smashing out a couple of minutes of animation in their evenings and sending it through to me. So, as far as a team, I guess we've got a cast of 4 or 5 main voice actors, including myself. Again, that's a one-day job for a 22-minute show. You know, they come and spend the afternoon recording voices, so they're not involved in the whole process. But the animation, it's probably about 5 or 6 people who put up their hand to help out with that at different times. So there's some animation in there that does go down the 3D path, and there's a few sort of hand-drawn frame-by-frame animated parts as well that I called on some friends to do those because I knew they could do them a lot better than I could. But most of the show was animated by me on the train or in the evenings at home. So they weren't involved for the whole year-long slog, but the time they did spend on it was quite generous.
Excellent. Yeah, well, that's good. It's great to get a lot of people involved in it. And with that, I guess I'd say, the final part for the Nurry Brothers Adventure World comes out this Friday. So that'll be available on YouTube. We'll have links to it down in the description below. With that, I'd just like to say thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Thank you.
It's actually quite an interesting one to go, like you said, small Australian productions. We need to talk more about them and celebrate more of them.
That's right.
So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Until the next time, we'll say bye-bye.